I spent a good portion of the day listening to Gemstone University. I don't know his name. I didn't look into it, but weird lighting, huh? Yeah. I listened to a good deal of this guy's material, and I kind of have mixed feelings about it. And the reason I have mixed feelings about it is because this brings me back to when I was like early 20s, you know? When Zeitgeist first came out. The first one. I don't know if that's actually when it came out, but that's when it came around, making its way to my table. And yeah, it was early 20s for me, so roughly 10 years ago. So I guess right around the 2008 market crash would be. This is bringing me back to those days, and those days aren't a particularly happy time for me. They aren't a particularly sad time. That period marks kind of the beginning of my eBay career that I had going for about 5 years. And also, that super traumatic weed experience was right around that time as well. And that's when I first I don't know, you go around sleepwalking for a long time, and then all of a sudden you just like run into a post or something, just very randomly. You've been sleepwalking your whole life, and then there's a post, just smack your face on it. So that's what happened to me when I was in my early 20s, and then I found out that sleepwalkers don't like running into posts. And they especially don't like it if someone else in their dream puts the post there, and they find out about it, and then they're like, why the fuck did you put that post there? I was snoozing so peacefully here. So I found out all these things, you know, and of course they're muddled and different stories on every single, just, oh my god, like, I know a lot of you can relate to this, and it was just like, it was information overload. It was Google anything and everything, and all of the tangents, and then all the tangents to those tangents, and find out every single possible hypothesis and every single opinion and all the other opinions on these opinions, and then find out the official story, and then find out that that's full of shit, and then go on and on and on and on and on and on, and then of course your own brain makes a mess of it as well. But that's what I was doing, you know, early 20s. And nobody, you know, no one wanted to buy any of it, at least no family or friends. Had one friend who was there for a bit, and then he turned Christian and disappeared off the face of the planet. I mean, he's still in my city, but we don't talk anymore. So that can happen as well. So watching these Gemstone University videos, it's interesting. It's an interesting feeling because it's bringing me back to all of the information that I think I found out, and most of you probably have known for a while, which is all of this legal stuff, the legal name, the straw man, the maritime law versus UCC versus law of the land, and then sovereign versus citizen, and then all this other stuff. There's so many other things going on with identity of the beings that are roaming the planet or the earth or whatever. So there's a big confusion going on there, and there's a lot of information, and it's seemingly a fraud, of course, when you look at the birth certificate, and the mother is signing your life over, basically. And of course you didn't have anything to do with it because you were a screaming little infant that needed milk. Off the top of my head, this is just like very basic thoughts about the thing. If you were signed into some sort of contract at birth while you were literally a baby, off the top of my head, that's just the most ridiculous notion ever. And then if you look into the society and you don't find out that when this baby has become of an age to be able to make their own decisions, so maybe, I don't know how old, whatever the legal age for anything is, 18. When the kid turns 18, bring him over to his birth certificate, explain every single last detail on that thing, what exactly it means, what his mother signing him over to the state, what that means, what does the all caps name mean, explaining the situation at all, really, to the now able to make his or her own decisions adult. And then they can say, hey, I like this, I can roll with this, let's keep the name, or I don't agree with this contract whatsoever anymore, and I will take on whatever name I see fit from here on out. And that would be that. But there's obviously, that's not going on in our society, and we get binded and bonded and tied up here and there, and all these other things. And for me, it's just, I think the level of non-aware people that were around then was so discouraging that I wished that I could unlearn all of the material, and I didn't even want to spend any time, because even if you're in slavery, if you don't have a friend that wants to join you in trying to escape the slavery, then there's just no point anyway, because you get out and then you're all alone. So there is a certain amount of rationale to the ignorance is bliss position, especially early on when nobody was entertaining such ideas. Not really, or at least not anybody around me. And in addition to all of this, what people were talking about, the realm and the situation and the laws and the wars and the political bodies, to me, the only ones that were ever making sense regarding these things or talking about it in a logical fashion were the sci-fi writers. These guys, they would include the political machine in their stories, and you would say, yes, okay, I see, I understand. And they weren't trying to make it uglier or happy or anything. They were just kind of fitting it in with their artistic mind in the way that it actually is there. And then here in our fake narrative world, it will present itself, the political machine will present itself as something entirely different than it actually is. And you can feel that in your gut, you know it. It's like these representatives get up on TV, or these anchors get up and talk about nothing, and they have no humanness in them, and you can tell it, you can feel it. That kind of thing. So seeing this video by the gemstone guy, it's putting me into a little bit of a funk, because I can see the possibility of it actually working as far as the integrity of the person who's putting forth this series, and the acknowledgement of all the various facets that are going to go into formally removing yourself from the parasite system, and reestablishing yourself, transferring over your sort of material abilities and assets into a system that is for the living, as he calls it, rather than for the corpse. It's not you're not speaking the dead body into life anymore via the how do they put it? It's a fiction. You're speaking the business, which is yourself, into life via the legal fiction, or your all caps letter, which is the same exact thing as a corporation. It's just no different. It's just that it has a living person at its head, rather than with other bodies underneath it, rather than the living person being the sole thing, which is called the sole proprietorship. But all these legal terms and all that, so, and legalese, and things were made to obfuscate and take advantage of people, and take advantage of people's ignorance, and the whole thing has always been insidious to look into, and it has never been particularly fun for me to look into it, and I've never had support while considering these things in a very pragmatic, practical fashion, which is how I would consider them. I wouldn't sit here and go try and, I don't give a shit about these systems. They're obviously not there for humans. They're there for something else, and they're just ugly things. So I wouldn't, of course, try and fight them, because they're dead things. Like he said, it's a big dead, it's part of the beast. It's a big dead beast thing. It's not even worth my attention. Yet it impinges on me in various ways. So I've been just considering. I mean, I was blasted back into the past, essentially, and remembering all of these things. But truly, I have always known that, or I've always felt that the financial system, there are kind of two ways that it can continue. One is stay on the same exact path and basically self-destruct, which is how the system was designed to do. Somehow either self-destruct, or they can keep putting band-aids on everything for however long that can last. And everybody knows you can only put band-aids on things for so long. Either that, or some non-parasitical structure for the exchange of goods, right, and ideas. All this value exchange system, a new structure that wasn't a parasite, had to come in. And it's not hard to envision what that would be. It's just we're not dealing in debt-based transactions anymore. It's not hard to comprehend a system that would be beneficial to all the parties involved. It's not at all. So this person, this man, I don't know what his name is, I probably should figure that out, but he's an example of what would normally be called, of course, a conspiracy theorist by the so-called sheeple, or proponents of the system, or NPCs, or there's 1,000 other names, but or just fearful people that don't like thinking about anything, or don't like thinking about their world in terms of it being a place that is not necessarily having their best interest in mind. So there are lots of different people, and they all have different various thought structures, and some of them are cemented in, most of them are cemented in. But the point being that this individual, this guy, he's not a typical maligned conspiracy theorist. He's just a practical guy. He's an intelligent guy. He's not an emotional guy. He breaks all these things down into very easy to understand conceptualizations, and you can tell that he's not. You can just tell that he genuinely cares. You can read his energy and you see, yeah, the guy cares. And everything that he's saying is simple and straightforward, and it makes sense. And yeah, it's also it's really funny. I think the whole system, it's so upside down. It's upside down, but at the same time, it is that way for a reason, and that's why all the rabbit holes exist and things like that. But we are viewed as what would Quasi the crazy guy, who also is not exactly crazy. He would say that you're a bunch of filthy necrophiliacs because you're in the eyes of the state, you're the living dead. You're not even the living dead. You're just the regular normal dead. And that's why we're in this particular kind of society, because we have given up our rights. We have given up it's not even rights. This is why I don't apply labels to myself, because I've seen that the naming of objects and people is the #1 way to control them and to get them into these systems of slavery. And I also noticed that if I don't name myself, then someone is simply making a claim, and there's nothing behind it if they say something regarding me. And I'm not even saying that there should be no responsibility for things in this type of idea, because that's incorrect as well. But there has been the parasite, of course, or just the evil force does exist, if you call it the devil or the Satan or the parasite or the father of lies or whatever. So all these archetypes do exist, and they are as bad as they've ever been made out to be, and the good ones are also as good and better than they've been made out to be. But they're certainly all around, and people embody these archetypes in various ways. Like a drug lord whose wife has maybe crossed him somehow in Mexico would have no problem whatsoever filming himself slicing her head off. He would have, he has no remorse, and he's probably coked himself out so he doesn't have any feelings left. And this is some sort of pure evil, and it does exist. And I've watched all that shit too. Like when I've been through my dark places, which have lasted for a while sometimes, and it's still it's not all bright and cheery now, even, although it's better. But I've watched every possible horrible thing that could happen to humans, either by accident or by torture, and I know the capacity that we have for being evil. or being accidentally evil, or creating machines that mutilate and maim the body. So I'm gonna look more into what they're offering. It's also called Pantera is the society. It's a private society, and if you want to, you go into some sort of a status change and change yourself from basically dead entity in the eyes of the law to a living trust holder, or your sort of estate or your interest in the land is being held in a living trust rather than, how did he call it, rather than you being like collateral for state entities and purposes, and being bonded for debt. What's the word? Debt. I don't even remember all these words. I never went into finding out what exactly all these words meant, because the system has always been so disgusting to me that I didn't want to. But I understand all the terminology he's using. It makes sense. Like, there weren't any really missing parts that there weren't any things that jumped out to me as red flags, or and as well, he also said, he mentioned a very important part, which is that the enemy is not the other, and by declaring the enemy to be the other, you're doing the Machiavellian thing of divide and conquer. You divide your enemy amongst themselves, and then you go and conquer them. And that's the Hegelian dialect, also similar concept. Even a false flag would be the same thing. All this stuff is about getting the people to argue with each other and to treat each other like shit instead of working things out when things actually happen. So as opposed to false flags or manufactured nonsense bullshit, when things actually happen, then the people can work it out rather than pulling out a gun or getting in a fist fight, or resorting to all these kinds of things. Anyway, I'm also, I think, in a weird mood because I did my Reiki 1 class a weekend ago. Yeah, last weekend. And I did an attunement, which is getting your chakras ready to be balanced, and you're supposed to be going through a 21-day chakra balance afterward. Apparently this happens automatically, and so you start with the root chakra, and then you go to the sacral, then you go to the solar, and all the way on up to the crown. And if there's any issues in any of these energy centers, then you'll be dealing with those. Now, I know it's kind of funny as well, because this exact same guy also talks about the chakra system and explains it away as simply an energy extraction device that our soul essence was hooked up to when we came here. But at the same time, we don't want to get too serious, otherwise we don't have any more fun. We're just like, everything hates us, everything's trying to eat us, and so on and so forth, which could be true. But just maybe only in this realm, hopefully not everywhere. been a little tumultuous for me recently. Maybe it's the same for everybody, I don't know. Being as I have somehow oddly been isolated from every other living being that could make some sense out of this situation. Maybe that's why. I don't know. I'm kind of used to it. Kind of used to being in the car half of my life. But I'm also ready for a change, so. I'll leave the link for the gemstone videos, at least this segment and series that I watched. It's like a 5-video series, maybe hour and a half long altogether, 2 hours perhaps. So yeah, let me know what you think.